So I've spent a lot of money and time trying to solve why this thing loses fuel pressure after it starts running up to temperature. I replaced the vacuum hoses, the mass airflow sensor, the ECU, the fuel pressure regulator, the fuel pump relay, the fuel pump twice, and most of the fuel lines, and completely refinished the entire fuel tank. And there are probably other things I replaced as well that aren't coming to mind, but none of this has actually fixed the problem. How does the car repay me for all these nice new parts? With a nice tow home. Yep, I'm not kidding. Eventually it died, it turned off, and just would not return, even when turning it off and turning it back on. Well, at least that's a result now. What was it that was causing all of our problems this entire time? This little 1-inch rubber hose that connects the fuel pump to the actual fuel housing. Literally a 20-cent piece. Why is this happening? Well, this hose was originally on a pump that was a low pressure pump that just provided fuel to the high pressure pump that was under the car. But now it's the only pump, and it is the high pressure pump. So this hose basically just isn't able to hold that high pressure, especially when you're going from a smaller connection to a larger one. I mean, because the real problem is that the fuel pump line is smaller than the actual housing line. And of course, this creates real problems for cheap rubber hoses. So let me show you how I fixed that issue.
So first I need to cut a piece off of the fuel pump housing. I need to make sure that the pipe I'm putting the fitting in is straight. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and make this brass fitting fit in that pipe. Now the purpose of the brass fitting is to make sure that the hose that goes from the pump into the housing is the same diameter. Instead of having a hose that goes from a small diameter to a larger diameter, we want that diameter to be exactly the same. We can use a much higher quality and higher pressure hose if this is the case. So I used the Dremel to take the bumps off of this fitting so that it can fit inside the pump housing tube. Once we get it close enough, what I do is use a little hammer to tap it on in there. And then I use some flux, some solder, and the acetylene torch. And then I go ahead and make this fitting a permanent part of the housing. And of course I had to do this a few times to make it airtight. I tested that it was airtight with a little air tester, put my finger over one end and applied air pressure into the actual hose, and if it was leaking, well, I went back and did some more torching. Had to make sure all the wiring was done properly, and I tested out all the wiring with a multimeter. Next, I cut down some high quality fuel line. Lined everything up so it would fit in the tank properly. And the last thing I did was go ahead and zip tie all of this together so it's not going anywhere.
Now once this fix was done, the car would accelerate flawlessly and run for hours without any problems. Now it's still completely gutless and it idles like crap. And oh, by the way, it does run a little bit warm for my liking, but it runs and it drives, and you know, I'll take that. We're gonna find out what the cooling system situation is in the next video though, for sure. So why would I fix up this old beat up BMW 733 that's not worth anything? Well, it could only be for the love of cars. And if this moron can figure out how to do this sort of stuff on an old beater, I know you can too. So go out there and find that dream car, the one you always wanted that's just sitting in someone's yard. You know what? Fix it up, make it run, and go have fun. And I'll see you guys in the next video.